the authorities here.
Tom, thank you very much for now. Tom Bateman there in Adana in Turkey. Let's talk to Sinan Ciddi, who's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies, who joins us live from Lisbon in Portugal, watching events from there. Sinan Ciddi, thank you very much. I wonder, when you look at just how huge this is, how devastating it is, where do these countries even start to think about recovering and rebuilding? Let's start with Turkey, if you will.
Yeah, this is absolutely a nightmare for the country. I mean, even a country that is well-resourced and as well-prepared as Turkey, historically, based on its experience in the 1999 earthquake, this is just incomparable. I mean, even if the most capable and resourced countries, such as the United States, had experienced an earthquake or series of earthquakes of this magnitude on its west coast, it would still likely need to call for international aid. This is unprecedented. So it's very hard to fathom, and I think the international relief effort is starting to come through.
Right, and if it's that difficult for Turkey, where on earth do you even start with Syria, a country that has gone through more than a decade of war?
That's exactly. I mean, getting supplies into Syria is one problem. The existing war and civil war is another problem, and the country does not have the resources even remotely close to what Turkey has, and Turkey is on its knees. So it is heart-wrenching and unfathomably been on a greater scale than Turkey. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, who are the likely candidate countries to help Syria at this current time? There are certain other countries who really don't want to go there.
This is correct. I mean, Turkey's getting help from essentially countries like, the United States, Israel, Greece, all other sorts of European Union members, as well as regional neighbors such as Iraq are sending aid teams. Syria is problematic because most of the aid will actually essentially have to go through through Turkey. And that's problematic because Turkey and Syria have, still ongoing bilateral issues owing to the war that makes relief efforts and supplies getting into Syria extremely difficult. So, there are good signs or a few good stories coming out of Syria with rescued children, but it is absolutely dire and more needs to be done, hopefully.
Yeah, and these were people who were in a very dire state already in that part of Syria, who were relying, a lot of them, on food aid. I mean, this on top of that is unimaginable, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it is difficult to see how more needed aid is actually going to get into Syria. I'm hoping that authorities in Turkey can help coordinate with their Syrian counterparts just to allow essentially vital aid to go through the border, even though it may be closed at this point.
How do you see the authorities in Damascus reacting to rebel-held areas being helped by the international community?
I mean, this is hard to gauge at this point, but I think what they should really focus on is just putting anything aside right now, because it very much is the ordinary citizens who are absolutely helpless that need to have the aid secured, because this is at this fundamental point an issue of humanity, and individual citizens, regardless of their status within their state, need to be able to receive that aid without question of where their affinities lie.
President Erdogan is going to some of the worst affected areas. In Turkey, how much anger do you sense is there about the situation people are in, and what is President Erdogan going to do about it?
I think the mood in Turkey is changing quite rapidly. There is a considerable amount of resentment and anger towards the president as well as the government, simply because it seems to be, the government seems to be absent. City after city, interview after interview, just people are screaming, "Where is the state? Where is our government?" There's been a huge underestimation on part of the Erdogan government from the initial outset as to just how bad this was. They delayed getting the military, which is the most resourced and capable sort of entity that could have, broken into some of these places much quicker. But relief efforts are very sort of spread thin, and people are, in many places are not able to have access to the actual search and rescue teams, with people dying and, holding their hands, etc. So there is considerable amount of resentment right now that's building up. But, it depends how they go forward coordinating these efforts.
And when you see that President Erdogan has declared that state of emergency, I think for 2 months, what actual difference does that make to people on the ground?
So it depends how they use it. I mean, the state of emergency in past experiences, especially the coup attempt in 2016, has been used to essentially silence media, dissident voices. There are signs that they're actually doing that right now in terms of actually trying to sort of quell the dissenting voices, because as much as this is an earthquake relief mission for the Erdogan government, it's also an attempt to control the political fallout. So there is extreme sort of sensitivity to the use of this issue, and critics fear that it could be used to sort of suppress the dissenting voices. And it's just set to end, this state of emergency, about a week before the election. So it really does. I fear the worst in terms of why they are using this, because on the material side, if it was just being used to deliver aid, you don't necessarily need a state of emergency. The government, he is the president. He can decree, he can will what he wants in terms of and coordinating relief efforts. But there is a fear that this is more politically motivated than it is humanitarian.
OK, Sinan Ciddi, we really appreciate your time there, speaking to us from Lisbon in Portugal, from the Foundation for Defence of Democracies.